Welcome to The Verdict. Kent Meyers and Mick Cornett joining you again this Sunday morning. And Mick, we've got a special guest today that has never been on the show before, which is pretty unusual considering how much we go back to guests over and over again. Justin Brown, the Director of the Department of Human Services, is going to be our guest.
Yeah, the guest is new, but the subject is something that we have peered in on from time to time, because I think there's so much attention and so many misconceptions about what DHS does and the effectiveness that they have in Oklahoma. I think it's always great when we can expose all the good things that are going on in that department.
Yes, we have been wanting to get Justin on ever since he assumed that position. We left him alone so he could get oriented into his job, and I think we waited a sufficient length of time. We're really pleased he'd give us this time. So, folks, when we come back, we'll be visiting with Justin Brown, the Director of the Department of Human Services. You're watching The Verdict.
Encouraging young people in the fields of science, technology, and math means to me that our country will stay on the forefront of innovation and new thinking. In First Lego League, they learn that geeky is cool, and that's the best. My name is Terry Sentner. I'm an IT specialist at the Library of Congress, and I'm a Chickasaw. When a kid goes from not ever having programmed a robot or even built something with an engine to making it drive forward, their eyes just light up. I've always been interested in science, technology, engineering, and math. Kind of goes with being an MIT graduate, I suppose. It feels so good to know that you're helping kids to become something they want to be, and they give me hope for the future. I think that there are a lot of opportunities out there for young people, especially Native Americans. Don't give up, and that's the key, is keep reaching.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofenation.com.
We want to reach out to every veteran we can in Oklahoma. There's somewhere around 340,000 veterans here in Oklahoma, and half of those are still unaware of the benefits or don't know how to go about getting them.
We help guide the veterans through the VA system. It's a giant maze, and we kind of help guide them through that maze. So our job is to try to help the veterans get everything that they're legally entitled to. There's just a special place in my heart for our Vietnam veterans and our World War II veterans, as well as any veteran, and that's why I do the job.
And welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Meyers and Mick Cornett. And as we indicated in the open, we are really pleased this morning to have Justin Brown, the Director of the Department of Human Services, join us as our guest. Justin is a lifelong Oklahoman. He is an Oklahoma State University graduate where he met his spouse. He has lived in a number of places in Oklahoma, but has finally settled in Oklahoma City. He joined DHS as director in 2019. From personal observation, I can tell you that he's been just doing a fantastic job in a very, very difficult position. Justin is kind enough, I will tell you a little secret. We're taping this on Veterans Day, so it's a holiday. So he's not only giving us his time, he's giving us his time on a holiday. Justin, welcome, and thanks so much for joining us.
Well, Kent, Mick, thanks for having me. I'm excited about the opportunity to be with you and share a little bit about OKDHS.
Justin, you hold one of the most important jobs in the state of Oklahoma. Can you go back through what was the hiring process like? What was your interest level, and how did that go when you were applying for the job and interviewing for the job?
Yeah, great question. So I haven't told this story in a little while. It's been a little over a year, but In April of 2019, I got a call from the head of transition for the governor's office asking me if I had an interest in serving the state. Coming from the private sector, I said, thanks, I'm good, not interested, but thanks for the call. The response on the other end of the line was, well, if you have a 1% interest, we should talk again. And I said, okay, I'll bite the hook. I've got a 1% interest. What does that mean? So over the course of about the next 10 days, 2 weeks, I had just dozens of conversations with lots of different people about what this looked like. I actually finally met the governor. He and I had never met in person. So we met about 10 days after that phone call. And after really understanding what the agency does and what the opportunity looked like, I told him in our first meeting, personal meeting, that if he said no to me, I'm good. The world is good. But if he said yes to me and I said no to him, I'd think about it every day for the rest of my life. And I don't have anything like that. And I wasn't going to start then. And so exactly 60 days from that first phone call was my first day as the director of the agency. That's June of 2019. And then in March of this year, 2020, I was duly appointed as Cabinet Secretary for Human Services and Early Childhood Initiatives. So I have an honor of serving in both respects and looking forward to bringing collaboration to the cabinet.
Well, what has been your biggest surprise that you perhaps could not have possibly anticipated in your position as director?
So for me, coming from the outside world, I would say that the biggest surprise is the level and quality of the state employees that we have here at the Department of Human Services. Being again in the private sector, I sort of had this uninformed vision of what the state workforce was. And walking in within a day or two, it was very clear to me that there are true public servants here at the Department of Human Services and that they are extremely qualified in their respective areas. We have wonderful finance teams and legal teams, and those are the sort of the support divisions, never mind the true heroes that work on the ground all across the state of Oklahoma. So that was probably the biggest surprise for me, is just the incredible assets that we have as a workforce.
You mentioned the quality of the employees. Talk about some of the numbers. It must take a huge staff to deal with the needs of all 77 counties.
Yeah, absolutely. We have about 6,300 employees spread all across the state of Oklahoma in 92 buildings today. We serve about 1.25 million Oklahomans, about a third every year of the state's population, between a third and a fourth. This year, because of the pandemic, we will unfortunately serve significantly greater numbers, because we also, one of our divisions is a social safety net. So we stand by when the economy is deteriorated. We stand there ready to serve. So it's a big agency with huge vision and mission. But again, we have just an awesome workforce that's really serving in these incredible times.
Let me ask you about the 6,300, and I just want an approximation. I obviously don't need a precise number, but of the 6,300 employees, how many of them are assigned or do their work in the child welfare area?
Sure, it's somewhere in the 40% range. It is certainly our largest division within the agency. Our second largest is the social safety net. We have really 7 program divisions within the agency that run different areas for the state of Oklahoma, but child welfare is certainly the largest with about 40%.
Would you mind running down those 7 areas for us?
Of course. So child welfare, adult and family services is the social safety net. So you would think of that as SNAP or food stamps, energy assistance programs, child care subsidy, those sorts of things. We also have child support. So we collect about $350 million a year in child support for custodial parents from non-custodial parents every year. We handle child care licensing. So we license and regulate about 3,000 child care providers across the state. Developmental disability services, providing services and funding for those services for people with developmental disabilities. Aging services, so it's a Medicaid waiver program that keeps people out of nursing homes and independent living at home, and senior nutrition is a part of that. And then the last is adult protective services, where we investigate about 20,000 cases of abuse, neglect, and exploitation against seniors every year.
Just in a couple of trends that are going on in this state, I'd like to hear you address both of them. One of them is expanding healthcare access, and the other would be criminal justice reform. What are your opinions on those?
I'm certainly in favor of improving access to healthcare. Fortunately, as I'm not a public health official, I don't have to go too deep into that. But I am supportive of increased access, just like so many of the resources that we provide. The opportunity for those in need to access resources that can help for them to live a healthier life, but also to lift themselves out of poverty is a real opportunity, I think, for the state. So supportive of greater access and quality of healthcare. From a criminal justice perspective, I've started to sort of dig in some here as well. And I certainly think that the numbers indicate that we incarcerate probably too many people and potentially for too long. Again, not as a professional in that space. I can operate somewhat as an amateur, but we do have high incarceration rates, and that results in significant levels of trauma for those who are not in the criminal justice system. So if you have, we see a lot of moms whose kids are in the child welfare system, and the level of trauma for those kids with moms and dads who are incarcerated is extremely high. So certainly in favor of smart reform in both of those systems.
Now, you operate primarily, I'll say primarily, by state appropriation funding?
Not primarily. Our budget is about $2.5 billion a year. State appropriations about $740 million of that. So we have a significant federal match because we run the social safety net programs. Again, SNAP, food stamps are about $850 million a year of that $2.5 billion. So if you look at sort of the operations of the agency, it is a disproportionate to state dollars, but we do run a significant number of federal grants.
Okay, on that, we're going to have to take a break. When we come back, I want to go back to that and visit with you about the support you're getting from the legislature to your funding requests. But right now, we need to let our funding sponsors have a word for a couple of minutes, and then we'll be back. You're watching The Verdict with Mick Cornett, Kent Meyers, and Justin Brown.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative, and this year, our competition teams ranked #2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Meyers and Mick Cornett visiting with Justin Brown at the Department of Human Services. Justin, I know that some portion of your ability to operate comes by virtue of state funding. What has been your relationship with the legislature insofar as the legislature being helpful in meeting your funding needs?
Great question. Thanks for the opportunity to share this. The legislature has been just such an incredible partner with us over the last 18 months. I really feel like we have generally a very strong relationship in which we can come to them with thoughts and ideas, and they can come to us with feedback from their constituents. And I think it's a very positive relationship that we have, and I'm thankful for that. From a funding perspective, I certainly would not like to be in their shoes over the next year. We can all see the economic devastation caused by COVID-19 and oil and gas issues as well. And so they're going to have difficult decisions to make, especially in light of the fact that so many agencies, just like ours, are so deeply impacted, because the demand is so much higher for our services in times of economic devastation. So now we're seeing SNAP claims, 50% higher than they were last year, which just requires more manpower and more effort. So again, we're thankful and appreciative that we consider them to be partners in our work, and are certainly willing to do what we need to do to continue to be partners going in that direction.
Justin, the workplace has changed for a lot of people since March, but so much of the work that you and your staff do can't be done from an office. It's got to be in-home visits, or it's got to be done, somewhere where not everybody is going to feel comfortable in this COVID environment. How have you handled that, and what sort of training have you had to give your staff?
Yeah, that's really sort of the million-dollar question these days, is how to respond with a 6,000 person workforce in the face of a pandemic. So ultimately, in 92 buildings, we as an agency are still mostly telework, probably something like 90% remote work. We've equipped our workforce with the technology necessary to do so, and they are serving in incredible ways. And I would love to come back and tell you more about that, because these are true heroes. From a customer interaction perspective, our buildings themselves are by appointment only. So we are trying to reduce spread. One of the things early on that somewhat kept me up at night was, with 92 buildings and 6,000 people, we could be the result of the spread of COVID-19. So we are by appointment only. Now you can make an appointment on the front porch and somebody will come let you in. So it's important to note that we are not closed for business. We're certainly open, but it allows us to screen individuals before they come in. From a visitation perspective in child welfare, we do, just an immense number of in-person visits every single day across the agency. And the approach early on was sort of similar to a national approach. As we went to lots of remote visits, we modernized the way that we work. And in fact, our requirements are one visit a month. And during that period, we were more like one visit a week, but they were just remote. And so everybody was safe from the virus, but we were having more interaction with the people that we serve in child welfare through remote visitation. Now we have opened that in many cases back up to in-person visitation. The level of integrity of those visits is just much different when you're in person. But we do expect for there to be a long-term modernization in the agency and transformation in lots of spaces. And this is one where we will supplement in-person visits with more remote visits. We'll have both of those going forward. The ultimate, though, is to keep our workforce and our customers safe, and that's the intent. Our director of child welfare is a physician herself, so she is acutely attuned to the needs of the virus, or the issues with the virus, and the needs of our customers.
Justin, let me ask you about child abuse and neglect and the incidents thereof in light of the pandemic. I know some agencies are reporting an increase in that activity during the COVID-19 pandemic. What have you experienced?
That's a wonderful question. So intuitively, you would imagine that in times of stress like this, instances of abuse and neglect would increase. And in fact, we're seeing that in other areas, like domestic violence calls are up. In the city of Oklahoma City, last time Chief Gurley and I talked, they were up 16% year over year. But the experience we've had in the Department of Human Services is a little different in that those who report cases of abuse and neglect are mostly or primarily teachers and educators. And when schools are closed, those folks are not there to see our children. So we believe that cases are somewhat higher, but our instances of reported abuse and neglect are down significantly, down some cases 35 to 40% year over year, because teachers hadn't been seeing our kids. So this is an issue that the entire country has been wrestling with. We have almost daily calls with with other states and with think tanks helping us to sort of work through what this means. So we're working on it. But at the same time, we do believe that overall cases of abuse and neglect do increase in times of stress.
Mm-hmm. Just in the budget process going forward, how does that process take place? Who will you sit down with, and how will you prioritize?
Yeah, great question. So we started in, so prior to the last budget cycle, we sat down as an executive team. I think historically in most agencies, it's really done from a top-down perspective budgeting. And it's we have a 4% cut and everybody needs to take 4% across the board. We sat down about 6 or 8 months ago, probably 8 months ago now, with our executive team and really started talking about the overall budget, not each division on its own, but everybody together. And each division started to prioritize what was truly core to the work that they do. And that way we could try to prioritize those things that will always be important, which are the services that we provide in our workforce, and deprioritize other things. Sometimes that might be physical real estate or postage or printing, some of those things. So we're looking for those efficiencies, but the general answer to your question is we are now doing a holistic approach to budgeting and making sure that in times of lean budget, we are absolutely prioritizing those things that are critical to the people that we serve in our communities.
Justin, address, if you will, your recruitment activities of new DHS employees during this COVID time. Are you pretty well staffed up the way you'd like to be, or do you need more folks?
That's really interesting, honestly. So there's two parts to being staffed up. One is new hires and the other is our existing workforce. We implemented a technology that I used in the private sector in the fall of last year, and really was incredibly effective at improving the number of applicants and the quality of applicants moving forward. So we were essentially fully staffed for the most part. There's some lapse and some vacancies in a workforce this size, but for the most part, fully staffed at the beginning of the pandemic. And what's resulted since the pandemic is that our turnover numbers are half of what they were the year before, or really 2 years before. So I think in part is we're trying to make the agency a better place to work. One of our attempts is to become an elite employer, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to winning some award somewhere that says we're a best place to work. But that has resulted in lower turnover numbers. So we're feeling good about where we sit as an agency with our workforce. Knock on wood, it's going to be a big issue going forward, but we're feeling pretty good at this point.
Justin, what can the general public do?
Wow. Every time I get this question, I think about a number of things. Primarily, the general public can open their mind to what the Department of Human Services is. Unfortunately, when those three letters come out in the community, it can strike fear. It has a stigma. And we provide unbelievable resources to our kids and families in this state. And I just would ask that the general public open their minds to think about what DHS is. Secondly, you can always become a foster family or support a foster family. So there's always need, with about 7,500 kids in care these days, we always need supports, and we cannot do this work alone, and your help is necessary. So go to okfosters.org and sign up to receive more information about becoming a foster family or supporting a foster family.
I'm sorry, Justin, we've just run out of time. I think that's going to have to be the last word, but thank you so much for saying it so eloquently. Mick and I have really appreciated having you on. Good luck to you in a very difficult job. Mm-hmm. And I think our viewers see the energy and enthusiasm from you that will give them great consolation, making sure that the kids are taken care of, as well as your other responsibilities. Folks, we need to take a break. Mick and I will be back to close the show. Thanks to Justin Brown, the Director of the Department of Human Services, and you're watching The Verdict.
It used to be okay in hospitals. It used to be okay in movie theaters. It was okay in classrooms, restaurants, and airplanes. But thanks to a greater understanding of the dangers, that's not okay anymore. So now that we know secondhand smoke causes lifelong health problems, why is it still okay to smoke with children in the car? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's get serious about protecting kids. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I really think people are so unaware of the number of kids waiting just in Oklahoma. And I think if more people knew that those children were out there waiting, I think that just by the way we live our lives and the people we talk to, that maybe we can help encourage adoption from Oklahoma.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Meyers and Mick Cornett closing this show with Justin Brown. Justin's got a lot of responsibility, but he's carrying it out in an exemplary fashion.
Yeah, there's a lot of qualities you're looking for in someone that's going to fill that role, but I would think amongst them is you want someone who's not going to be easily overwhelmed. Yeah. Because that job has to push people to the limit, if not daily, certainly frequently. Website information on how you can help and be a part of the answers, okdhs.org. And we have a website, theverdict.tv. Log on about a guest you'd like to see or a subject you'd like to see us cover.
Thanks to Justin Brown. We appreciate his time. Mick, it's always good to see you and be with you for this time. Folks, watch us on Sunday mornings now, starting at 10 instead of 9. And then on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as well. You've been watching The Verdict. Thanks very much. See you next week.